So Professor Nowotny has been several times here in occasions that are related to this topic and to the humanistic and social sciences. But I would like to welcome her again and introduce her as the former president of the European Research Council, vice president of the Lindau Nobel Laureate meetings, and a member of the Austrian Council for Research and Technology advising the government. She is Professor Emerita of Science and Technology Studies. She was at the ETH Zurich and has held teaching and research positions at the Institute of Advanced Studies in Vienna, King's College Cambridge, the University of Bielefeld, the Wissenschaftszentrum Berlin, and the École des Hautes Études en Sciences Sociales in Paris. She was a fellow at the Wissenschaftskolleg Berlin and permanent fellow at Collegium Budapest Institute of Advanced Studies. Professor Nowotny's research interests are in the field of STS, so Science, Technology and Society, in research and innovation policy, and in social time. Her early work includes topics such as scientific gender relations in science. Her later work focuses on the changing relationship between science and society and on transformations within and through science. Among her later books are Insatiable Curiosity and Naked Genes, What It Means to Be Human in the Molecular Age. Professor Nowotny's new book, The Cunning of Uncertainty, will be published this October. She has received many awards and doctorate honors, honoris causa. I remember the last one at the Weizmann Institute, including this one. So I shall ask Professor Nowotny to speak now, and afterwards I will introduce Professor Wayne.
Thank you very much, Rivka, for this kind introduction. Good morning, everyone here. And it is indeed a very special feeling to be back in this room, and there are many memories connected to former times when I was here, when Yehuda was still with us. Let me take you back for a moment to the year 1497. At the University of Bologna, there was a young Pole who paid, as the archives tell us, 9 grossetti to inscribe at the university. His name was Dominus Nicolaus Coperling de Thorn, and he later studied in Italy for 6 years, moving on to places like Padova, Roma, and Ferrara before returning to his native Poland. The rest is history, as we know. And the question I want to raise here is, what was it at this particular time and place that may have stimulated the work that Copernicus did? He had access to the treasures of knowledge of the ancient world, the books that had been transmitted. At the same time, he was able to meet young colleagues from astronomy and mathematics with whom he could discuss. But so were many others. They also had access to the same books and to the same colleagues. So was there something more? Maybe. This was the time of the incipient Renaissance, when the fervor of new ideas permeated Italian universities and Italian courts. And the main idea was to transcend the knowledge that was transmitted by the ancient world, that there was a discovery of knowledge that was not known as yet. And we may, of course, speculate whether this particular moment in time helped the humanities that were coming up and emerging, helped also Copernicus. Petrarca noted the works of the past are like the flowers from which the bees take the nectar to make honey. And this means it's not only the flowers, it's the bees and their work that made it possible to open up to what in the end became the identity of modern Europe. It's also a moving testimony to the intellectual energy unleashed by what we now call the humanities. As we know, the humanities are concerned with the past, the richness of culture and cultural products of the past. But let me just, in parentheses, say here something about the social sciences, which are not the topic today, just in parentheses. At the time of the Renaissance and for some time afterwards, the social sciences were nowhere on the scene. It took a lot of political upheaval. It took the ideas of the Enlightenment. It took the way how European societies, in particular, were transformed by the process of industrialization. Karl Marx famously said, everything that is solid melts in air. And this was the ferment out of which the social sciences grew. And contrary to the humanities, the social sciences are concerned with the present, the messy social world that we are living in, the conflicts, wars, the geopolitical and economic shifts that we undergo today. End of parenthesis. Now let me take you from the year 1497 to 2015, more precisely to the 21st of July of this year. You may wonder what happened in that day. I was reading the Wall Street Journal, and my eye was caught by a paid advertisement that appeared that day in the Wall Street Journal. It was paid, to be very precise, by an organization called the Breakthrough Initiative, whose founder, Yuri Milner, a Russian-born millionaire now living in the US, is leading an initiative called the Breakthrough Prize. And the advertisement was signed by some 30 eminent scientists, including Nobel laureates. And it poses the following question. And now this is a direct quote: are we alone? We, I quote, are a mature civilization, and like a mature individual, we must ask this question. Is humanity defined by division, its problems, its passing needs and trends, or do we have a shared face turned towards the universe? Mind you, the question is not about the future. It's about the immediate present and the immediate future. Even if some 1,000 light years away, it is turning towards the universe. And the simple question, are we alone, raises the question, what happens if we discover the nearest exo-Earth? What are we to do? And the advertisement, tellingly, must resonate with everyone in the humanities and social sciences. The time to act and find out is now. And there comes a humanistic promise with it. We will know more deeply about us if we act. So if we follow these two signposts, 1497 and 2015, we find ourselves at an interesting temporal junction. On the one hand, we have knowledge about the human past, which is carried forward towards a future, which takes place in an extended present. It's not captured by science fiction only. Gone are the days in the 50s when people were dreaming of flying cars. Now we have self-driving cars, drones are all around us, and even if wearable electronics are not as yet on everyone's bodies, the market is ready to take it up. And many people are following the kind of self-tracking of daily bodily functions in order to adapt their diet, their lifestyle, and possibly also the genomic undercurrent of who we are. This is also part of who we are. We have definitely entered the era of big data. Information has become the honey that flows today. And we know that it also is a profit-making honey. We know that the interface between robots and humans is progressing very rapidly. And those working at the forefront of AI, some of them get worried about further developments like autonomous warfare. These are the challenges and the bigger picture I see for the humanities and social sciences to take up. Now let me very briefly turn towards the institutional context in which the humanities find themselves. Much has already been said by Gabi and by Wilhelm, but what I see happening is that the universities are ready to take up the tools that help them to expand and to extend what is happening already. This is digitalization, the digital humanities. But the impact of digitalization goes much deeper. It raises issues like what are novel forms of cooperation across disciplines, but also are we on the verge of seeing a new culture of sharing emerging, and what form would this culture of sharing take? We see that with big data we are moving rapidly from asking the question why, which is so deeply ingrained in the humanities and social sciences, to asking the question what. And in the end, I think the challenge of big data for the humanities and social sciences will be to explore and better understand how the meaningful emerges from the meaningless and is able to continue. Now, there are some moments when I'm optimistic that all this may converge also in an institutional context, but looking at some figures very rapidly, a more sober reality sets in. We see that government spending moves not towards the social sciences and humanities, but to the technosciences, and it is motivated by economic growth and further way. We see also the decline of interest in the humanities. For instance, just let me give you some figures here. Stanford University, while some 45% of the faculty members in Stanford's main undergraduate division are clustered in the humanities, only 15% of the students do. Great for the students, but it's not a good sign for the future. Harvard had a 20% decline in humanities majors over the last decade, and nationally the percentage of the humanities majors hovers around 9%. In Europe, the situation is less clear due to the different way we work, and the only exception seems to be China, interestingly enough. And in China, there's a good reason. The humanities have been discovered, they have been made a priority of the government, but it's very tightly linked to the students entering also courses in informatics. And the reason behind this is a very simple one. Machine learning and reading ancient texts is progressing very rapidly. So if you have more students trained in both, knowing about the Chinese past and the text, as well as having some skills in the way how machine learning progresses, we will be swamped with Chinese texts that are completely unknown outside of China, and this is one of the reasons. I now would like, I will not go into internationalization, MOOCs, etc., but I want to devote the last part of my note here to the tacit dimension of curricular design. And here I see one trend that I call the 3 Ds: digitalization, democratization, and design. Digitalization, I have already mentioned, big data, and I will not say much more about digitalization, except that they are what we call a generic technology which works in a transversal way and that will upset many of the disciplinary boundaries as we know them now. New research fields will emerge, new epistemic objects, and we need an adequate preparation for this. I will not go into democratization either, except to remind us what Yehuda very often said: science is not democratic. And there is a great competitor that has arisen more for the social sciences and humanities than for the natural sciences through the widespread use of social media. The cognitive authority of the social sciences and humanities is much more challenged by this democratization of access to information and access to knowledge than in the natural sciences. And while the natural sciences have responded by fostering openness and something called the Science Citizen Project, the social sciences and humanities still have to do so. So I want to come back to the third D of my 3 Ds, namely design. Design, in my view, is a creative activity that is undervalued and often misunderstood. It's creative as it's intended to give form to some material or epistemic object. And design may follow function or vice versa. It may also be done for purely aesthetic purposes, but the important point is it's never finished. And even when it looks finished, it remains a draft. The disegno was a line thrown out on a piece of white paper. And the interesting thing was what happens to the environment interacting with this line that was thrown out, the disegno. So design being unfinished means it can always be improved. It can be combined with other designs, with other objects, with other networks, with other people. And we can look at it as largely an ecosystem of knowledge in the making. And it is often undervalued and misunderstood also because we have inherited this cult of originality, while much of the originality today happens in combining elements that are already there. Design has yet another advantage, and this is where the tacit dimension of curricular design enters. It invites and provides feedback for the inherent engagement it sets up with the world. And the question is, does it work? This may consist in fulfilling a function, but it may also consist in seeing what it does in its engagement with the environment in quite unexpected ways. It works by and through addressing and engaging with an audience, whoever this audience may be, when and where, and whether the audience has been invited or not. There are also uninvited audiences, and we should have a look at them as well. It is this dimension of engagement with whom, where, and how, which is part of the tacit dimension of curricular design. First and foremost, it's engagement with the students. Who are they? What is their background, their motivation? What are their aspirations? And, to quote Arjun Appadurai, what is their capacity to aspire? Students come from different parts of society, yet as a group, they will form an important part of the future society. Engaging with students therefore means engaging with past, present, and future of at least a part of society. If there is something specific about curricular design in the humanities and also in the social sciences compared to the natural sciences, I would say it is the mandate to teach our students the ability to ask questions. There have been many attempts to look for the equivalent of a lab in the natural sciences, in the social sciences and humanities. And I would claim the lab should be the art and the knowledge how to ask questions and what is an important research question. But there needs to be space and time that allows the students to do that. We need much more experimental spaces in the universities to allow them to do precisely that. Many of us remember Yehuda telling about the way how he selected candidates for the excellence program that he once set up. He sent them here to the library of the Ben Lear And he asked them to come back with a book. And the question was, which are the questions the students had about choosing that book, the author, its content, or which are the questions which they would like to ask their future teachers. So teaching to ask questions has to be built into the curriculum. It should be its lifeblood, and asking questions opens a dialogue, which is another form of engagement. Dialogues are open and explicit, with whom, what kind of dialogue, when, and how. So I conclude. I started with giving you two images implicating the humanities. One featured the creative richness of the past as the source of the intellectual energy of the humanities and beyond it. The other image is that of a science-based and technology-saturated extended present, with its seemingly irresistible thrust towards an immediate future in the making, whether it's searching in the universe or redesigning life, as it happens now in the life sciences. The question of who are we and who is the we are very pertinent everywhere. And it is this junction where the tacit dimension of the curricula must make more explicit and meet the public discourse. There must be space for the imagination, and I want to end by making one observation, looking at present towards the imagination and imaginaries that fills the societal space, but also the individual and collective imagination. They are predominantly of a technological nature. And this dominance risks to eliminate or to marginalize the imagination that we have about what is a good society and what is a good life. And here I turn to Yaron to tell us more about it. Thank you very much.